Hello everyone and welcome to WUVA Sports ACC Tournament Preview. I'm Henry Pallatroni, joined by Duncan McGrath, Jacob Higgins, and William Smythe. This week we're sitting down to discuss your 22-9 Virginia men's basketball team's chances and outlook going into the ACC Tournament and March Madness in the next few weeks. All right, gentlemen, our Virginia team ended the season on a high note with a win over Georgia Tech on Saturday. 22nd win of the season, another good win at JPJ. What have you guys seen from this team overall, and particularly in the last few weeks this year?
Yeah, mine's going to be more of a season-long take, but this team reminds me a lot of the 2019-2020 Virginia team. They won their last 8 games of the season before it was canceled due to COVID, before the ACC tournament was canceled. This team has won 8 games this year. That was late January and early February, and now we've been playing some of our worst basketball of the season. Not the time when you want to be playing your worst basketball coming into the ACC tournament and trying to get a spot in the big dance. That 2019-2020 team was looking for a spot too, and I think they clinched it through their play in late February and early March. So you're seeing kind of a similar narrative where they had big win streaks, but just Virginia trying to get its bearings, especially after a win against Georgia Tech. You need to keep that momentum going into the ACC tournament.
Definitely a team that maybe peaked a little bit too soon.
I think they peaked too early.
The season's not over yet. Jacob, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think defensively this Virginia team has proven that they're just as capable as any other Virginia team in recent history. But on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's clear that this team lacks go-getters in terms of putting the ball in the net, with an exception of Reese. And I think if Virginia wants a chance to make any substantial progress in the ACC tournament or March Madness, I think it's important that other players on the team really step up. And I think we really got to see that take place recently when Tane Murray took Rhodey's minutes in our Georgia Tech game and put up very valuable minutes, 12 points off the bench. Just good stuff to see.
Yeah, I think some guys that haven't had as large an impact are going to have to step up inevitably for this team to sort of jump over the bubble and sort of secure a spot in March Madness this year and maybe even win a game or two at that point. Duncan?
Yeah, and another thing for me is UVA has been a very different team at home in JPJ versus on the road or in neutral site. If you remember early in the season, UVA lost 65-41 to Wisconsin and Fort Myers, and then almost lost to a bad West Virginia team that only had 7 or 8 scholarship players available. That was a 56-54 win over West Virginia. But they've been a terrible road team. Duke blew them out. Virginia Tech beat them by 34. Virginia's been a different team at home, though, and they've only lost 2 games in JPJ this season, one to North Carolina and one to Pitt. But the ACC tournament and a potential NCAA tournament run, that's not going to be at JPJ. So for UVA to reach their full potential, they're going to have to find a way to win games away from home.
We are 2-1 in neutral games. Virginia is 2-1 in neutral games. That win against Florida actually aged really well, by the way, in Florida going into the tournament. Huge early season win when I think Virginia scored almost 80 points. And now it's kind of hard to imagine that happening. But 72 against Georgia Tech is a good start.
That Florida wins might be their best win of the season.
I think so. That or Clemson on the road. I think Clemson is a 5 seed in the recent bracketology, which still blows my mind, considering they're 6th in the ACC, I believe. So Virginia's still a 3rd in the ACC. You can't really complain about that at the end of the day.
This year's basketball team is on the bubble for a current bid in the NCAA tournament. Duncan, you're a bubble guy. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, UVA currently sits in a very unique situation under Tony Bennett. This is the first time since 2013 where UVA really has been on the bubble. And that year, UVA did not make the NCAA tournament and they ended up losing to Iowa in the game I was at John Paul Jones Arena in the NIT. So it's been really 11 years since UVA has been squarely on the bubble for the NCAA tournament, but that's where this Cavalier team is right now.
William?
I think this is a very unique position we're in, that Virginia's in, especially 2 years ago being close to the NCAA tournament after beating Duke, but then not quite getting there and going to the NIT. But I think this year is weird in terms of the bubble. I think the teams aren't nearly as strong as they usually are. According to Joe Lenardi, the famed bracketologist, Virginia is now 3rd, or I think 2nd in the first 4 in. Virginia's changed from first 4 buys to first 4 in. I do want to say that I think it's ridiculous that there are some teams that are considered buys or already in the tournament field that are above the Cavaliers. Villanova is 17-14. They have a win at Creighton that is really just holding them, and as well as the win against North Carolina early in the season. Michigan State is 18-13. I know we all remember Michigan State for what they did to the Cavaliers in back-to-back years, but there are some teams that have really questionable resumes that are being propped up by their early season hype, and I think that that's a problem with a lot of the tournament committee, their selection process. There's a lot of preseason buzz. People know that Michigan State could probably make a run. Like, they've done it before as a low seed, but you got to consider the season. And I think that Virginia is undervalued, even though we have really bad losses. I just think there are teams out there who should be on the bubble, but this is the position we're in, so we have to deal with it.
Jacob, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think because UVA is on the bubble, I think our biggest enemy will prove to be bid stealers. And I think for what it's worth noting that our backup point guard, Dante Harris, was on one of the biggest bid-stealing teams ever in 2021, Georgetown. He was able to propel their lackluster offense around, I think, 12 points a game to the tournament. At a game I was actually at, a championship game against Villanova. They didn't have Colin Gillespie, so kind of a fluke run. But yeah, so if he could really show his talents and unearth something new in the tournament, that could be very useful to us.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have guys in the locker room who have been there and done that. At this point, Reese Beekman, back-to-back ACC Defensive Player of the Year, that's not someone we need playing in the NIT, right? And that's why we have the ACC tournament, one last chance for this team to continue to stack their resume before Selection Sunday.
Can I just say,
Go ahead, sorry.
Just one last thing. You need to cheer for Dayton, FAU, and Princeton in their respective conference tournaments, because there are going to be teams that are looking to bid steal, as Jacob said, and Virginia's going to put themselves in a very tough position if they do end up losing to Clemson or Boston College or Miami or whoever it is in the quarterfinals on Thursday. Don't want to have to deal with that, but if it does come to that, you're going to want FAU and Dayton and Princeton to secure a spot in the NCAA tournament. So.
All right, as we all know, this team has one more chance in the ACC tournament to build its resume before Selection Sunday. Jacob, I'll start with you. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important to consider the fact that the Cavaliers have a double bye in this tournament, which means we'll have ample opportunity to be well rested and ready to put our heads down and possibly get a win or two and increase our chances at the tournament.
Duncan?
Well, under Tony Bennett, UVA's been very successful in the ACC tournament. They won in 2014 over Duke in the final. They beat North Carolina and Brooklyn in 2018. And even last year, they lost to Duke in the final in 2023. This year it's different. UVA does have a double bye and is the number 3 seed. They'll most likely get Clemson in their game in the quarterfinals. But even if they're able to win that game, Duke is a monster who just blew out UVA in Durham. So I'm not sure I love UVA getting super far in the ACC tournament.
And we've established that a neutral site in Washington, D.C., even if that matchup with Duke happens in D.C., isn't necessarily going to be any sort of beneficial to this team. William, any thoughts?
It is better than Greensboro in terms of having Duke fans, but I also think it's a travesty that the ACC tournament isn't in Greensboro every year. Moving from Brooklyn to D.C. and then Greensboro last year needs to be there permanently. But anyways, I do like this matchup if it's Miami or BC or likely Clemson. I like this matchup for Virginia because of the hunger factor, assuming that with Clemson already clinching a spot in the NCAA tournament, as we mentioned, probably a 5 seed, they can probably only get their stock up to a 4, and that's if they win the ACC tournament, which is very unlikely. So I think Virginia has to be incredibly motivated coming into this one. You could argue there have been games earlier this season where Virginia should have been motivated and fell short. Against Duke and Cameron, that would have been a huge one to move the needle, and against Carolina at home. But I think a win against Clemson would really, really help this team in terms of the metrics. It would be a quad 1 win, which says a lot to the committee. People don't know what the committee does behind closed doors, but that would certainly help Virginia in their quest for a bid.
All right, we'll move into a final segment here where we're all going to give a brief answer, yes or no. Is this year's Virginia men's basketball team going to get selected into this year's NCAA tournament? I'll start with you, Duncan.
My answer is yes, and here's a quick stat of why. The outright number 3 seed in the ACC has not missed NCAA tournament since 1979. So the answer to me is yes.
My answer is also yes, and my reason is that I just really like our odds going to the first game. Maybe not so much the games after, but I think one win is all we need. So for that reason, I say yes.
I say yes. Could this be a team of destiny in the ACC tournament? Probably not, but you just need to get that one win, and I think that I have a gut feeling. It'd also be nice if Virginia gets into the NCAA tournament and is the underdog for the first time in, Duncan, how many years?
Really, probably 11 years.
Yep. That would be a fresh start, I think, after having incredible expectations coming into the tournament.
Yeah. And I'll close it out. This may seem like the bias coming on behalf of this group of gentlemen here, but I'll also say yes. I think we're going to get it done in the first round against a Clemson or a Boston College or a Miami. And all in all, I think we get a bid in this year's NCAA tournament. I'm Henry Pallatroni, joined by Duncan McGrath, Jacob Higgins, and William Smythe, WUVA.